Rise and join us in a pledge for flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We're making a minor change on the agenda and we are removing item 2.01 from consideration at this time. With that said, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Move to approve.
Second.
Great. There's a motion and a second on the table. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I vote aye as well. Motion passes. 1.04 is the introduction of our Elko County School District Student Board member, Miss Gracie Graves.
Gracie, I get to introduce you. Gracie was born in Elko, Nevada on August 7th, 2007. She has attended Carlin Combined Schools since kindergarten. During her academic career, she has been awarded Student of the Month, perfect attendance several times, and each year has been in the top 10% of her class. Gracie has participated in leadership, FCCLA, winning gold at regionals and nationals her freshman year, yearbook for 2 years, drama for 1 year, volleyball for 3 years, and softball for 2 years. Gracie has many interests. She enjoys drawing, painting, and creating. She also enjoys caring for her 2 cats, Willow and Butch, reading, anime, and spending time with family and friends. Currently, she is the Carlin High School yearbook editor and has been working with the school office to collaborate on a mural for the school as her artist abilities thrive. She is a model student who puts forth her best with enthusiasm, humor, honesty, integrity, and complete dedication. Welcome, Gracie. We are glad to have you here with us today.
Thank you.
Welcome, Gracie. You have anything you'd like to say at this time? All righty. 1.05 is to receive a presentation from the Carlin High School Drama Club. This is a non-action item.
Hi everyone, my name is Landon Nassau. I've been part of the Carlin Drama Club since I was in 7th grade. This was the 2019 performance. We performed A Christmas Carol. That's little 12-year-old Landon. I played Ebenezer Scrooge in 7th grade. We then had our COVID years. Oh, this was our cast then. Mostly 7th graders at the time. We had a few upperclassmen, but now, or after that, our drama club mostly consisted of upperclassmen. We had our COVID years, so we could not perform until again in 2022. We performed in here due to our COVID restrictions. We performed The Most Dangerous Game, which consisted mainly of the original cast that were at this point freshmen. We performed right there. And then again, we had another hiatus year. Oh, sorry, this is our cast that year. We had another break when our director had a child. So we took 1 more year off, and then we returned last year with a play called Well Written, again performing here. We do not have any stage or anything, so in 2019 we performed in the multi-purpose room, but there's a lot of restrictions with that, so we mostly stuck to here. Hopefully this year we're going to spread our wings a little bit more and leave. But the cast, oh, and then after that we went to the GBC Performing Arts, and they did Little Shop of Horrors, and the director John Rice gave us a tour of their set. It was really, really cool. We got to watch one of their rehearsals. I think it was the last dress rehearsal before they performed. It was really cool seeing all the behind the scenes stuff, because our behind the scenes stuff is lights that we hook up right here to shine on us up on a couch. It was really cool seeing everything that goes into it that we can't really do because of our size. But, we're coming back. We are starting a play right now. It's Alice in Wonderland Urban Edition. We're performing in a couple weeks here in November. We just started rehearsals this week, so it's been fun. I'm looking forward to our bright future of the drama club. Also, I'm now a senior, so I've been doing this since 7th grade. So I'm almost 18, and I started when I was 12. So. Yeah, that's all. Oh yeah, this is us. This is this is us now. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Landon. Comments or questions from the board for Landon or for the drama club?
I think it's great that you've been doing it that long and now you're one of the upperclassmen and you can kind of show the younger kids how it's done. And I'm excited to see what you guys can do. And if you're in here or in the gym, it'll be exciting to see. So when that happens, can you let us know as a board what day that'll be? Awesome.
We already have it.
Yeah, so it's gonna be
Yeah.
September 14th or November 14th, 15th, and 16th.
Okay.
The 14th and 15th will be 6 PM showings, and then we'll have a 2 PM and a 6 PM on 16th.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
I'll just say, Landon, thank you for sharing that with us. It's fun to see what you can do regardless of your space, right? It's pretty amazing when you can say, hey, we've only got some lights in this library, but we can present this amazing, play. People come, they can be entertained. You're going to enjoy lots of opportunities as you graduate and leave Carlin and go other places and do impromptu theater or whatever. You'll be ready. You'll be ready for any of that. So thanks for sharing with us.
Alrighty, 1.06 is input from the public. Alrighty. 2.01 is receipt review and possible acceptance. No, it's not, because we've taken that off of the agenda. We will have the geothermal system back on the agenda at a future date. 2.02 is receipt review and possible approval of proposed changes to policy JGE, student welfare, food services, and this is for possible action. Before we begin, well, actually, no, let's go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
All right, decent little conversation we had at the last board meeting about this policy. There were good questions, and it was fun to watch Paul squirm a little bit as those questions were asked. But in the end, there was one minor change made from last meeting to this one, even after all the discussion. And that was we spent a fair amount of time on this kind of point, and so hopefully this this kind of clears up what was going on there. But you'll see under 2C, under reduced meal benefit, there was an error where it said that the reduced meal students identified as eligible to receive reduced price meals would receive one free reimbursable meal, and they do not have a free reimbursable meal. They have a reduced reimbursable meal. So that was a mistake the first time around. It's been corrected, but everything else stays as is.
Okay, thank you, sir. Before there's a motion on the table, Mr. Durham is not able to join us today, and he said that he didn't feel like he articulated quite clearly what he was looking at last time. So he has asked that the amount of meals that are charged in section 2A be increased to 10 to allow for, from 5 to 10 to allow for a situation in which parents or guardians may be between pay periods. To be clear, all such meals advanced to the student would be charged to the account with an expectation that they are to be paid for. Paragraph 3 of section 2D would still apply to all advanced meals. So I put that out for consideration for the maker of motion and or for discussion. How would the board like to proceed?
Well, since Jeff isn't here, I guess I'll ask the question, are there any kind of issues with moving it from 5 meals to 10 meals? I mean, obviously I understand there's a financial implication, so don't think I don't understand that part. I mean, beyond that, is there any other limit to doing that? I know Jeff was pretty passionate about that. So
I mean,
any other thoughts?
It's just the additional assumed risk that
Mhm.
the district, you would be saying as a board, you're comfortable with the district taking in those situations. Knowing that it's not necessarily going to be recouped, if that's something you are willing to direct us to do, then that's really the extent of it, is how much more money you're willing to say. We'll allow them to take double the amount out So if a full price meal is somewhere in the neighborhood of, we'll just call it like, and it's less than $4, but math is easier with whole numbers. So, you know, 5 meals for that person would be $20. You'd essentially be saying, you can let them have up to $40 of debt before they'd start having those repercussions. So that's something you want, then that is what the implication is. I don't think there's any other.
Not speaking for Jeff, just letting the conversation there, in that conversation, or letting conversation out there, that in that conversation, his main concern was he knows through the conversation last board meeting with Mr. Allen that we're not going to tell the kids, sorry, you don't get anything. Instead, they get a sack lunch. His concern is if it's a sack lunch because the parents are in between pay periods, then that has a stigma attached to it. And he didn't want that to lead to harassment or bullying or anything on that line. So
it is worth noting that there isn't like a set time every month or anything like that where a parent would put dollars into the student's account. Like that can be done right now on your phone. It can be done on a Saturday. It can be done any day of the week, any time of the day. So it's I get the concept of being between pay periods, and but just want to make sure everyone's clear how that system works. It's accessible at all times to deposit, whether it's $40 into that account or if you can put $5 into the account. It's I think the first time you do it, there's like a service fee. That's how that company makes their money off of the service. The rest of it is after that one initial action. Everything thereafter is just putting money in. So if people are in tough situations, they don't necessarily have to put money in for 3 weeks at a time. It could be 1 day at a time, or a week at a time, depending on pay periods and payability.
That was going to be one of my questions. So they have the 5 meals, but if they could pay for 2, then they would still they could then build back up to the 5 if they needed to, correct? Or is it like you have to clear that 5 before they can?
It's a good question. I mean, the way it is read here is they will be allowed to charge a maximum of 5. So if you change that to 10 and someone was at 10 and they paid down to 6 or whatever, then with policy reads, I think they'd be able to keep going until they got 10 again.
And if they came upon hard times, they could fill out the form to qualify for free or reduced lunch if that were to happen midway through a year, right? It doesn't have to be just at the beginning.
Correct. Yeah, that can happen at any time. That is in the 3rd paragraph of 2D, where it's the last sentence. It says if a hardship exists, they're encouraged to apply for free or reduced price lunch at any time over the course of the school year. So, as financial situations change, they can do that. And sometimes just from experience, people may not qualify but still have financial hardships. Just for we're not the IRS, and we're not in charge of how those systems work. So if someone has a demonstrated need, but for some reason, because of tax purposes or whatever, they don't qualify, I also encourage those families to talk to the administrators at the school, because whether it's through communities and schools or someone there, I've seen people before, a staff member who's like, oh, I'm willing to sponsor this kid's meals for the month, that kind of thing. Like there are good Samaritans out there who don't want a kid to go hungry either. And so there are people who are usually willing to make it work out. And it won't cover every situation ever, but it can't hurt to ask that question of a caring administrator who will help try to find a solution if they can.
And can we do like 8 instead of 10? Because 10 is like 2.5 weeks. 8.
Yeah, you can do whatever number you want, I guess. The recommended one was 5. But I was thinking about that too, Adriana, that 5 is a week and 1 day, and 10 would be 2 weeks and 2 days. So yeah, if you wanted to just say, well, it's maybe the intent of 5 was 1 week worth of lunches, and in our case where we're a 4-day, 2 weeks worth of lunches would be 8, or 1 week would be 4. That's up to the board.
And the 10 was discussed with Jeff and I, and he said he recognizes that with a 4-day week, it's 2 weeks and 2 days. He said that way, if they're not on a 2-week pay period, but a twice a month pay period, still would kind of cover that.
To me, then they would qualify by filling out that form. I think the way the policy is now is fine, because sometimes the more time you give someone, the more they take advantage of that, and then we're also not in the business of charging. I mean,
Or the deeper the hole gets dug and the more difficult it is to get
Yeah.
out.
That sounds like a motion potentially.
Yeah.
You ready to make a motion there, Miss Susan?
I was gonna say the same thing. I think that paragraph where it says, if a student is without meal money on a consistent basis, the administration will investigate the situation more closely and take further action as needed.
yeah, I think it's taken care of in the policy.
Yeah.
Because of course we don't want kids to go hungry, but I think it's taken.
Yeah,
care
and
of.
acknowledging that a lot of this does kind of require, I don't know if it requires the right word, but it's very helpful if people are willing to say stuff, and also understanding that, you know, for some people, this could be a point of embarrassment or shame. It shouldn't be, but it can be. And so sometimes it's tough as an administrator to know every situation, and to be aware, especially at some campuses where you have kids who, like, it's an off-campus lunch option type of thing. And so, well, who knows, like that kid may be leaving and we think they're eating, but they never are. And there is a food option at school. Like, there's so many different possibilities, and like, it really, I was gonna say an infinite number of scenarios. It's not really infinite. We have as many kids as we have, but it does sort of require a little bit the willingness of a family to seek out that help, and if at least expedites the process. If they don't seek it out intentionally, you know, eventually someone probably notices, and a teacher who's monitoring lunch, or an administrator who sees the kids sitting by themselves never eating, like, that stuff can happen. But we really do encourage people to, if you need help, to ask for help. That's what we want to do.
And I also like under 3, I think it's, let's see, 3D, it says the consequences of non-payment will be determined on a case-by-case basis. So I'm okay leaving it at 5 also. I think the more we can try and, I guess, shy away from having a bunch of negative balances that end up having to be covered by our general fund, the better. And so, and where it says it'll be handled on a case-by-case basis, and that it'll be looked into by an administrator, if it is a, you know, if the student's without money on a consistent basis, then I'm okay keeping it at 5. So I guess I'll make the motion.
Okay.
If you don't care. So I'd like to make a motion to approve proposed changes to policy JGE, student welfare food services.
Second.
Great. Motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. 2.03 is receipt of a central office department update. Mr. Smith.
So I'm gonna try standing over here so I can set my computer down and work with this. So hopefully I picked up on the microphone. I'll try to speak. Well, let me first task. Share my screen. So I'm gonna try to turn and face you, but best I can. Just wanted to give an update to the board here about the Nevada Educator Performance Framework, or the NEPF, as it's more commonly referred to. This is our, the educator performance framework that we use to evaluate all of our licensed employees. That includes teachers, administrators, counselors, librarians. There's of course some slight variations depending upon the job category that everybody falls into, but for the most part, the framework follows a very similar format, and we'll get into that a little bit. But just a little bit of background for the board. This framework has been in place statewide since 2013. Prior to that, at least to the best of my knowledge, there was not a consistent statewide framework for evaluating licensed employees. And so for the last 11 years, this has been in place. A lot of the things that are a part of NEPF are governed by Nevada Revised Statute, Nevada Administrative Code 391. So, changes to, at least substantial changes to a lot of this is not necessarily anything, that happens at local level or happens quickly, because it needs to go through the legislative process to do that. But I'll provide a little bit of information as we go through it. And then if you have any questions about that sort of stuff, we can talk about that. So as I mentioned, it's been in place for a while. This slide, which is kind of blocked by that one's open, I guess, blocked by the screen there, provides just a little bit of an overview of the teacher framework. And I have another slide that'll show a school administrator one also, and you'll see that for the most part, they're very similar. And that holds true for the other categories that I mentioned. They're called OLEP, other licensed employees, other licensed educational personnel, excuse me. I knew there was a letter I forgot in there. But basically what you need to look at there is that the educational practice side represents 85% of the overall evaluation score. And within there's two different categories and two different sets of standards that you can see are listed there. The first is instructional practice standards, which represents 65% of that 85. And then professional responsibilities is the other 20. And then on the other side, that's kind of covered up on this one screen that might be difficult to see on that far one, is a student learning goal, which represents 15%. And so that's a goal that each educator, regardless of what position you're in, sets at the beginning of the evaluation process. There's some flexibility in the student learning goal, which is actually really kind of a nice thing, in my opinion, in that the teacher and the administrator, or the administrator, school administrator and the director who are working on that have a little bit of latitude to determine what's appropriate to put in that category for a student learning goal. There are, of course, certain criteria. We've mentioned previous presentations or conversations related to our school performance plans, where when you create goals, you try to make them SMART, where they're specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Same criteria applies to this. There is an approval process where it has to be finalized as an acceptable goal that meets those criteria, so that it's something that can be measured and realistic and all those sort of things. But that's the last category there. So you can see that that's kind of the general idea of how that works. And then last thing that I'll direct your attention to is that the kind of bottom left two squares there. Within the instructional practice domain and the professional responsibilities domain are a set of standards that help provide the guidelines for the scores that are eventually generated through this process. And another thing that I didn't put up on the slide, or put a slide for, just to mostly for the sake of time and hopefully being a little bit concise, is that as every educator and administrator is completing this process, they're following a very similar cycle where they do the goal setting, the self-assessment at the beginning of the school year. They participate in a series of observations. The numbers vary depending on years of experience, probationary versus post-probationary status, prior evaluation scores. So it can vary anywhere from 1 to 3 observations over the course of a school year, and then a final evaluation at the end. That's a lot of information. I'll pause there for a second. Any questions about the framework overview or the cycle that our licensed personnel go through?
So Ray, I will ask one question real quick on the student learning goal. As the board is kind of signaled, as the district starts moving towards that individual portrait of a learner with less emphasis on standardized testing, is there a process in place to encourage the sites, either director to administrator or administrator to teacher, to take that into account accordingly and make that relevant if we're going to move away from those standardized tests?
Sure. So let me make sure I'm understanding your question. You're saying like an emphasis on moving away from MAP scores necessarily, exclusively MAP scores or SBAC scores or
Right.
ACT scores.
The board has signaled that, the district seems to be working towards that.
Sure.
And so I didn't, as we move into evaluations, if we're gonna say, yep, here's our MAP scores, but we really don't value those scores currently. Value perhaps is the wrong term, but you know what I'm saying?
Exclusively.
Mhm.
value, maybe, yeah. So I guess I'll answer that by saying that has always been it's been available through this process. There's a manual, NEPRF manual, and if you look through that, it specifically says, and that's been the case historically, even that, you know, those student learning goals could be centered around classroom assessments. And I've had some experiences where I've had teachers who have come up with student learning goals around their own classroom assessment. So I guess I'll say that's always been an option. I don't know that I've expressly said anything along those lines directly to our administrators recently. Certainly could be done, but that flexibility has always existed in that process.
Thank you.
That's your question. Other questions? So the next slide is very similar. It's just the school administrator overview, and you'll see the weighting is the same. The categories, for the most part, have the same name. I think the teacher one is instructional practice, whereas the administrator one is instructional leadership, but you know, very slight changes. And then the content of the standards that make up the framework are of course a little bit different because the job is a different job, right? So not too much different there, but I did want to just show an example of the school administrator. So the next slide is probably about a year and a half ago, the State Department began reaching out really explicit. Well, I guess let me back up even a little bit more. Every year there's a survey that's completed that goes out to all of our licensed employees in our district and in every district across the state, and they have opportunity to provide feedback. And that feedback gets compiled by the folks at Nevada Department of Education. They have a meeting with each district NEPF liaison, which is me at this point, and go over the results of that. And that's been happening for every year that this has been in place since 2013. But one of the things that has really come up consistently over the course of that survey, both here in Elko County and across the state, is just kind of some questions about, is what we're doing achieving what we want it to achieve? Is it time for an update? So that's the title of this slide. So about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half to 2 years ago, there began to be this conversation of, based on this survey, are there some updates or some changes that could be made? And so I wanted to just give you kind of an idea of the current context and to help answer that question. So again, like you saw in the previous slides, there's 5 instructional practice standards and 5 professional responsibility standards. But within those standards are things called indicators. And you can see from that slide that, and this is specific, or this is true for both the teacher and the administrator one, as far as the number of indicators there. You can see that there's 19 indicators on the instructional side of it and 15 indicators on the professional side of it. So you put those two together, that becomes 34 different things that there's requirements to provide evidence of meeting those indicators. There's different performance levels, 1, 2, 3, 4 for each indicator. So you take 34 times 4, you know, we're getting into the triple digits here of things to try to keep track of in your head. And so by the time that rubric gets done, which is an attachment onto the agenda item here for the board members and for the public to look at if you feel so inclined, that rubric comes to a grand total of 24 pages. So what started out on those first couple slides is, you know, a pretty basic flow chart of 85% to 65 and 20, and you've got 5 in there. I can keep track of 5 things in my head. When you get to 34 of them with 4 different performance levels, sometimes it gets a little bit lost in translation, I guess is what I'll say. And you can see there in the numbers that I put on the slide, you know, those are based on our most recent survey of Elko County staff members. So that would be all of our licensed folks had an opportunity to take that. And you can see that we have a quarter of them that indicate that that they either disagree or strongly disagree that the amount of time that they took on their own evaluation was reasonable. And then you can see we have nearing half of our administrators indicating that they disagree that the time they're spending evaluating teachers was reasonable. And I think that, this is my own opinion, but it's been corroborated and substantiated by people that I've talked to. A lot of the reason for that disagreement relates to just the sheer number of indicators and performance levels of each indicator that comes from that. And you can see I did put on there that the statewide results show similar levels too. So it's not anything that's unique to Elko County. But so because of all of that information and the results that kind of started continually popping up on that annual survey, the state did start taking a look at what can we do to potentially remedy this. And so their solution, or at least their proposed solution, is what they're calling an NEPF redesign field study. And it's basically a pilot, is another way to call it, for the year 24-25. I think all districts were given an opportunity to participate. We, as Elko County, took that opportunity and have chosen to participate in that. So all of our teachers and all of our administrators this year, and those are only 2 job categories that are in the field study this year. Our other licensed educational personnel are still on the old system for this at this point, because it's like a pilot to see if it does accomplish what we're hoping. But so they've put together this field study, and basically the big change in it is that the standards and the standards themselves stay the same. So there's no change there. And I think that's a wise choice, because since it's been in place for such a long period of time, it's something that we've become familiar with. And so, not changing that is probably a wise decision. But underneath those standards, the indicators now, and this is a little bit of semantics, but they basically condensed the indicators together and changed what they called them to descriptors. So again, potato, a little bit there, right? But what you'll see is that by condensing them and putting them together and making it so that they're a little bit more, I guess, all inclusive within the standard, instead of having a score for each individual indicator, there's an overall score for that standard. So going on the instructional practice side, from having 19 different numbers that are averaged to produce the overall instructional standard or instructional practice score, there's 5 scores. And the evidence that you're providing and the content of the descriptors is still really this very, very similar. It's just less wordy and condensed, and provides, I guess, I think, a little bit more concise description of what it is that is prioritized within each of those instructional standards. And you can see that what that has done, when you look through the rubric, which is also attached to the agenda item, it's reduced that document, by more than half, from 24 pages to 11. Basically gets it to a point where it's maybe a little bit more, at least for somebody with my brain capacity, ability to keep things in your head as you're completing that evaluation process. And I did put in there, that's an important thing to note. The domain percentages, the 65 and 20 and 15, those stay the same. So there won't be any change to the weighting of those categories. It's just a condensing of the indicators, basically. And then I put a link there. The Department of Ed has put together a toolkit webpage that has a whole number of links, probably about 15 or 16 of them, to various things that give you everything you've ever wanted to know about the NEPF redesign field study, and probably a little bit more. So feel free to use that link to go there and explore it as you see fit. And sure that our principals and teachers have spent a fair amount of time on there, as I shared that link with them last month. So, questions about the redesign or what changes with that?
Could I just ask, how much time does one administrator spend on one evaluation observation, like roughly, like
For the whole process, maybe?
Yeah.
I guess the short answer will be there's a lot of variability for a number of reasons. First off, like I mentioned, a first-year probationary teacher, there's more observations in that cycle. So that part by itself is going to increase the amount of time that you're spending there, which is a good thing, right? Because as somebody's new in a profession, you want to make sure you're providing that extra oversight and extra touch points. So so that would be one example. And then on the other end of it, you have a veteran teacher who was highly effective for the last 2 years. That gets them into an exemption status for a year, where they just have one observation and are exempt from the final evaluation. So if you've demonstrated you're highly effective, so you've got pretty extreme ends there. And then it also probably depends too on within that context, whether you have a teacher who is, as you're progressing through that process, if they're struggling, there's obviously going to be a lot more time. I would say for the most part, an observation is, around an hour itself, just being in the classroom, watching that, at least or as close to you as you can. A lot of times we have class periods that are 50 minutes or whatever, so that might be a little bit shorter, but the observation part itself is at least an hour. There's a pre-conference that takes place with the principal and the administrator, the principal and the teacher before that. Those are probably the shortest 15 to 20 minutes, I would say. And then of course there's the time to type it up and go back and fix up all your typos and all the rest of that sort of stuff, and then a post-conference. So I would say at least each iteration of that process is probably realistically at a minimum 2.5 to 3 hours. And that may be repeated 3 or 4 times over the course of a year per teacher.
And that's just the observation. There's also the goal setting conference at
Yeah.
the beginning. There's the time it takes to do the ratings, to have a conference about the ratings with the teacher when that final period comes. I'm sorry if I'm stepping on your toes, right? But like, I mean, if you have one required observation, I know I as a principal would always try to do at least. So that would be what's called your formal observation. And then there are informals where you're going into a classroom minimum of, I would say anyway, a few times a year, just as much as you possibly can. So some of that stuff is like officially part of the evaluation, but I still consider like anytime you go into that classroom to see how things are going, check on that teacher, support them, because that's your teacher you're evaluating. Those things all enter into it. It's a lot. And when you think of someone who you got 17 to 20 of those that you're responsible for, and that's for some people it's more than that. It's a
Yeah,
lot. It's a lot of hours.
I
And
don't know the
see
exact
my
number, but
administrators in the room being like, yes, it is a lot of hours.
I think you're right. That 17 to 20 number, my educated guess would be that's probably about the average number of evaluations that each one of our administrators complete each year for the licensed people.
And so how much time does a teacher spend then on their portion of it, do you think?
It would be probably pretty equivalent to the
Yeah.
same amount of time.
Okay.
Because the other side of it, they're doing outside of the conference and the observation itself and the post-conference and the goal setting is the gathering of evidence, right? So part of that process, they're able to provide, because like CJ said, best case scenario, you're able to be in a classroom, a handful of times over the course of a year, probably for a formal observation. But there's a lot of things that go on that may not be happening during that observation. And so teachers have opportunities to put together and provide evidence to support things that maybe aren't directly observed by the administrator. And so that could be a time consuming process to put together as well. And one other thing that I'll say about this redesign that I had in the notes and I got to talking and didn't even notice it, but I do want to make sure and point out that I anticipate and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to see as a benefit. And that's the purpose of this redesign, is to that field study is to see if it accomplishes what we're hoping it will accomplish. And it gets really back to what was kind of the real primary focus of the NEPF when it was first created, was that the important part of an evaluation or an evaluative process is not necessarily, the important part is the collaboration, the conversation, and the focus on the high priorities that happen over the course of that. And a teacher or an educator or a principal, whoever it is, recognizing these are the things that I do really well and I'm going to continue these things. And these are the things that I can really take to heart, that I can have some area of improvement in, and make that change, not just on the day that my principal comes in for my observation or evaluation, but make it as a sustained improvement, because that's what really benefits kids. And that really truly was the focus of the NEPF in its initial creation. Over time, I think because things just tend to have a tendency to do that, where they get longer and get wordier, and so sometimes that maybe got lost a little bit in the shuffle. And so I'm really hopeful that this condensing and really just making it maybe a little bit, I don't want to say simplistic, because it's certainly not simple, because we've been talking about it for 20 minutes here, but it just really highlights what's the important part, is identifying where areas of improvement are and having that collaborative professional conversation between you and your supervisor and working together to support that change.
I'll just throw into one more thing. Thanks, Ray. The NEPF or the evaluation, whether it's here in Nevada or in other states, there's unfortunately, like I've noticed pretty much everywhere I've gone and seen, is culturally these processes end up not serving the purpose they're supposed to, right? Right, just kind of went into to that stuff, but like in the end, a number has to be given, right? Because that's the framework, and unfortunately, that number ends up feeling personal to someone, like especially when there are words attached to those numbers like ineffective or minimally effective or needs improvement or things like that. The really at its core, if it's done properly and you have a good relationship with that teacher and you have a good conversation, and like you're there to support, right? And so if the course of that evaluation or observation demonstrates some deficiencies or some areas for needed improvement, like that's what it's meant to do. And I think because some of that stuff is worked into collective bargaining agreements or into things like that, all of a sudden it takes on this thing of like, oh, well, if I get a bad evaluation, I can be fired. It's like, well, technically that is a process, but like bad evaluation does not equal lose your job. Like, I mean, I've given I've given some not great evaluations to people before, but I've never fired any of them. It's always been like, hey, we've identified kind of what we need to do to get better. And it's supposed to be a process of improvement. And so I think when it's like any other tool in life, the tool's as good as the hands that it's in and what it's used for. Not gonna have much luck putting a nail in with the saw, right? Like it's not effective. So if you're trying to evaluate someone's worth with NEPF, it's not gonna be an effective tool. If you're trying to identify areas where people can get better at delivering instruction, yeah, it can be good there. But both parties need to be equally invested in working with each other, and that's what it should be about. It should be about continuous improvement.
And then the next couple of slides, I mean, really I kind of talked through it all, but I know sometimes visuals help. So the next couple of slides are just really a visual representation of what we've talked about. So that's an example of the first page of the current rubric, where you can see the 5 standards and then the indicators underneath it. I didn't put it in here just again for being a little bit concise, hopefully, but the next couple pages are, this document would be followed by another page that provides examples of evidence that would satisfy each of those indicators. And so that's a couple of pages. And then you have within that each indicator. So for example, standard 1, indicator 1, there's a page that has descriptions of what a level 4 in indicator 1 would be, what a level 3, level 2, level 1, and repeat that 19 times or 18 more times for the other 18 indicators. This is the redesign instructional practice side, where you can see if you were to go back and forth between those two slides, you'll see that a lot of those things a lot of the terms are the same, but they're just definitely more concise, more clear on what they mean. And it's this page followed by a second one that has a little more description of a level 4, 3, 2, and 1 for each standard. So rather than each indicator is just each standard. So it's 5 pages. Again, just a little bit more concise. And then the last one is just a visual representation of what the final summative evaluation tool currently looks like on the left there, where you can see each standard indicator listed. And so there will be, in that top instructional practice domain, there would be 19 scores there that get averaged together, or four scores in each standard that get averaged to the standard score, and then the 5 standard scores get averaged to the instructional domain score, whereas the one on the right, the redesign, has a score for each standard that would then get averaged into the final score. So you see it basically goes down from that 34 number to 10. And I think we're so new in this process, we haven't got to this final evaluation part of it, but what I'm really hopeful and seems to be logical to me is that because that template there on the right is just so much more, so much simpler. It's going to be easier to recognize where are those areas where I can improve. They're not going to get lost in just the jumble of so much at once. At least that's the hope. At the end of this year, when we complete the pilot, we'll find out if that's the case or not. And then one other thing that I did think I forgot to mention is, so we're participating as a district. Lyon County is participating. There are some schools in Clark County, not the whole district, just because they're so large. And then I think there are, at least I can't remember exactly which ones there are, so I'm not going to say a name because I might get the name right. But I think there are at least 2 other counties who have a few schools who are participating. So it's a fairly good representative sample size across the state to see if the redesign accomplishes what it's intended to. And if it does, then there would be the possibility of moving forward with going through the legislative process of making the changes to the NRS and NEC that need to be done to that is my last slide.
So Ray, I guess my question is, sometimes in education, it's like we're worried we're going to cut too much out. Is it simplified enough? Are we realistically getting back to the original intent of, the NEPF? Or are we just like, okay, well, we're going to cut some of this out and make it simpler, but are we really getting back to the original intent? Or is there more that you could look and say, hey, we are still taking too much time from our teachers to do this. We're taking too much time from our administrators, and it's not necessarily benefiting our students. Is there more that could be taken out? Is there more that could be trimmed down to give everybody some time back?
So my own personal opinion is yes, probably.
Okay.
I can answer that is yes. There are some additional things in here that we didn't really get into, that class size reduction numbers and things like that, that I think they're honestly so confusing. It's hard to even know exactly where it is. So I think I like how you're thinking, and I think you're right. At some point, that would probably be a discussion to have of can that be condensed or removed altogether also to make it not be as complicated. But I would follow that up by saying, I think this is a pretty good first start, and seeing if it starts moving the needle towards that intended purpose. And if it does, then we'll have some momentum to keep going with that and look at that. So yeah, the short answer is yes. The long answer is I think this is probably enough in
It's a start.
first step. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would hope that as the Nevada Future of Learning and the Nevada Portrait of Learner kind of take a little more root and things start to change from more of a statewide perspective, that we would start to see changes in here that reflect what those values are and what the skills and the competencies are that are in the portrait of a graduate and all that. So I would anticipate as that rock continues to roll, that it'll hopefully we'll see those kind of trickle down effects in other areas.
Questions?
Thank you, Ray. 3.01 is the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right. Motion on the table with a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. 4.01 is the superintendent's report. Mr. Anderson.
Hello. So just a couple of things I'll share with you. Really look through my calendar to see what I want to share, but that's okay. 2 things. Number 1, just a minor update, not much to share at this moment regarding the school up in Owyhee that we're trying to build. Because of the kind of disparity in available funds versus projected costs, there's a lot of work being done right now from the engineering design perspective to see what can be trimmed away. And so I know there's still other work going on behind the scenes. I'm not going to speak to what the tribal council is doing or what the governor's office is doing, because those aren't entities that I have any oversight over, I guess. But what we are doing is we're still working with Design West to make sure we're kind of finding all the possible areas to trim down. I think we're getting pretty close to something else, but someone might say, well, why is it taking so long? Something important to understand is that when you're just like switching out materials in a project, that doesn't take a long time to say, oh, well, we can just swap this metal for this metal. But when an entire building has been designed, and let's say a suggestion is we're going to remove a classroom, or we're going to change all of the HVAC to this type of unit now to try to save money, or we're going to cut the gym down by 20%. That all requires redesign. You can't just say, well, the gym was $1 million before and now it's 80% of what it was, so now it's an $800,000 gym. It doesn't work like that, because that wall is probably the cheapest part of the gym. So there's a lot. Just kind of sounds like an excuse, but it just takes a while. So once that it took a long time to get in the first place, and so now when you have to kind of blow that up to a certain extent and redesign something, it takes quite a bit of time, is my understanding. So we're still working on that. And we'll try to keep you updated as we find out more.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Are we having to pay more money to design west for this redesign?
They don't work for free.
Okay, so,
But I don't know if it's I honestly don't know if it's part of the design costs or anything already. I'm not sure how to answer that.
okay. So my concern there, I don't even know, I mean, how far I can get into this. My concern there is if they're doing redesign without a construction company there with them. I know several of us on the board had brought up from this point on going with CMAR, so that we're not doing a redesign that still isn't going to get us within our target price range, and that it'd probably be more beneficial to do the CMAR route. Have we looked into that at all?
Yeah, we have.
Where are we at on that with the looking into it? Because if we're still redesigning, this would be the time to do it with a construction professional.
Yes.
Yeah, where we are is we did some talking with other districts who have engaged in it before. And I do know that, basically from the time we found out we weren't going to be taking that bid, or there was no bid, they started to work immediately anyway. I know that, again, there wasn't an official bid, but there were documents and quotes, and we kind of know, we know what those costs were going to be for those individual areas. So we were able to see, hey, this is the cost of those materials, this is the cost of doing the concrete, etc. So those costs are still what they are, and it was broken down for us to see, like, hey, this is kind of what those areas look like. So while there isn't an actual CMAR that's doing it right now, I guess I'm saying they know which areas were rising or hiking the prices up, and where we can find the most reduction, I guess is what I'm saying.
At what point do we make the decision to do CMAR or not?
I think now. I don't know. What can we do as a board though? Like, I don't even know where we go from here though, because I feel like in the process, we should be doing CMAR now. Because if we spend more money on redesign and then they're still off when we put it out to bid again, then we're back where we are now. Versus if we were doing CMAR, the construction company would be working with the design company to make sure that everything that is being designed falls within our budget, so that we're not.
Guess what I'm saying is,
here.
even though we don't have a designated CMAR, there is collaboration going on to make sure that those costs are reflected.
So then I guess the next question is, who is that being with? Because they wouldn't fall under a professional design company, which means that we need to do an RFP.
I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Okay.
So I can get back to you on that.
Sorry, do you have something else?
No, I just No,
Okay,
no, I think you guys have said it.
okay.
It's just, the whole project is frustrating, so. um, But I understand everyone's trying to do what they can.
I just hate to delay it any further, to have it go back out for redesign, think that we have it where it needs to be,
I guess,
and then it still doesn't fall in our target price range.
yeah, if we kind of piggyback on Brooke, then I guess, is there like a maximum we're paying them to do the redesign? Like, or is that already fall within what we've approved? I don't know offhand. I don't have anything in front of me. Does anyone know?
We haven't approved any amount,
Well, oh, that's what I'm saying. Like, so we're,
but that
I
doesn't. fall
appreciate you
to
guys are
us.
trying to do due diligence on that.
Mhm.
But if it's gonna cost more money, is there like an amount that you can go forward with what we already have approved? I'm not saying is that we haven't approved a definitive redesign budget with it. I'm saying within our original parameters that we approved, is there an amount that you know of, or anyone here
An
know?
amount for design?
Yeah, so if you're doing a redesign, so Brooke asked, hey, are we paying them to redesign? And you were honest about, hey, I know they don't work for free, but I also don't have that data. So my question is, then how far does that go? Right? So like, is it
Well,
5K? Is it 500K?
Yeah, so
Like,
usually the design process is all a percentage of the build.
Okay.
So
if they're gonna redesign, then they're gonna do their typical charge, which would be a percentage of
Of the redesign.
redesign.
that's
In
what
which
I-
case you have indicated that they're trying to use data that we have of the other, of the other bids, basically, to figure out where we can scale it down. Hopefully. And Brooke's
so-
concern is that by the time we get to that point, it's not gonna matter anyways.
Prices have increased or whatever.
Yeah, or whatever. And so that's why we're like, okay,
Construction manager at risk would
is
solve
there
a lot of these problems.
so the better question then, Brooke, and the better question for you, sir, is why wouldn't we go CMARS if we're already having this problem instead of just shooting wherever, hoping that the arrow lands on the mark or somewhere on the target, as opposed to trying to have someone that's gonna monitor it overall? I guess, why wouldn't we go that direction, I guess?
Difference of opinion.
Okay. And then I guess the next question is, if it's the will of the board to go the CMARS route, is that a matter that's brought up before the board then? Like, is that where I don't know where that sits in
I
any of the
don't know.
procedural
That's-
stuff.
I'm not sure if that's within the board's.
I guess the
That's what I'm
board,
asking. That's what I'm asking. We don't know, because this is all new.
Yeah.
And so CMARS is new. It's been hidden from us for whatever reason. And I don't think you guys did on purpose. It's just, we don't know about it.
It just isn't something the district has done historically.
Yeah.
really, At all.
Totally get it.
Yep.
To which I would argue again, that I continue to argue, that's the mess we all ran into.
Yeah.
And so we would love to look into this, because a lot of the other stuff we've done seem to pan out decent. But I guess that's the question, is what is the procedure? I don't know what the procedural is. As far as if that was what we all wanted, is it something we can't do?
And where, one of our big jobs is policy. If this is something that's really important and we feel like this should be a policy that affects every construction project we ever do, then my thought is that's where the board would start.
Yes.
We would recommend a policy, and then, we would discuss it. We would go forward that way, because that's one of our big jobs is policy. And if that's a route we want to take, and we feel like that is under the purview of the board, then I think that's the route we take.
So the route
'Cause
we've
we
been
can
going
stand and
now.
talk right now, but
Yeah.
we need to, if we want to take care of this project in a way that where the board has authority, our authority is in policy.
So the policy that we have where we do the build, the way that we do it now, so I don't mess up that term, the way that we do it now, we
do a design build.
do a
So
design build, and that is just based on that's just our accepted policy, or we have an actual policy that states. we're
technically,
doing-
it's a design bid build. There are
Design bid
three,
build.
right?
Yeah, so
bid
design
builds.
bid build, but we do design bid build. And we do that based on an actual policy, or we just approve funds and you guys do whichever route you deem necessary.
I don't know for sure, but I would bet it's the last.
The last.
I'm pretty sure it's not policy.
I
Okay,
think
and
it's just
so
historically
in
how the
order,
district's done things.
since we have a differing opinion
Mhm.
between board and staff, which can happen. Then if we were to push it, then we'd have to make policy where we stated that this would be, or is that something that we can all sit down and have a conversation to better understand?
I think that could be productive.
Okay. I just don't know. I don't know where we go from here. I'm trying to figure out where we go from here, as opposed to walk away from this table again with different expectations, not understanding the direction we go with that.
I stand corrected. Policy FFC. Method of public work contract award. All public work contracts for school district facilities must be awarded using the traditional design bid build method
We do have a policy.
pursuant to provisions of NRS 338.143 through 338.148.
So we couldn't, you can't even do CMARs
Which
now if you wanted.
Those are all out of date now because there is an NRS now saying that you can do CMAR.
Well,
But it's saying in policy, but it's specifically
pursuant to
names.
those NRS.
Yes.
Yeah, so
I
it's
know.
referencing
So we would
those.
have to change that policy.
Yep, so you
come
can't,
up
they
with new
couldn't,
policy.
they could, even if you guys were with it, you couldn't, because our policy states we only do the one.
So to Teresa's point, then
We need to change policy then. at
we
that
need to
point.
change policy.
Mr. Asher, I'd love to have policy, whatever.
FFC.
FFC, if we could take a look at that, that would be great.
There are other policies that also
Any other.
have
policy.
little
And any other
pieces of
policies, yeah, that are
involved.
associated with it. So we can give the opportunity and then have the opportunity to discuss that.
And I would say the sooner we handle this, the better, because I honestly feel like without going the CMAR route, we're losing money and we're losing time.
Okay.
So then back to the, take a CMAR off
Sorry,
the
I just
table.
gotta correct one thing. We're not losing anybody.
Yeah, we're
None of
not.
this is coming out of our general budget or
If-
our
if
pay
we're-
as you go.
But if we're losing
The-
funds towards this school.
The project, so we are not, but yes.
The project.
The project is
Okay,
spending
I
money.
get the project, yeah.
Yes.
So we're just trying to be stewards there. So as far as Awahi is concerned, then, right now, we're doing, the current process is that there's no other option that we have to do. Because our policy states that our policy is that.
Maybe. There's other things. No,
Okay.
sometimes practice is different than policy.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think that's part of the mentality right now is that we're in it the way we're in it. You know? So trying to make it through. But I don't think we're strictly prohibited,
Mhm.
I guess.
We could go, yeah, we could try and, if there's something
It's
that's
your policy.
beneficial, yeah,
It's
we
your
could do our
policy.
policy.
I mean,
Yeah, I get you. I get what you are saying.
there's no policy police. Except for you.
For sure, for sure. So if we really
You can
wanted
hold a
to, but
special meeting on Friday if you want. or
Yep.
Whatever, Monday and change it right away.
Right
Like,
there.
you can do
I
it.
like policy and I like rewriting policy. I don't know that I can do it that quick, but if that is what the board wants, then I will try.
I think we're just trying to do
You-
good
You're
by
trying
this
to find a
project.
solution. I
Yep,
got it. Yep.
yep. Yeah, without, yeah. And then this matter without stepping on too many toes, but. Okay. All right, so I guess at the end of the day, do we have the, I mean, you have the questions on the actual project that you need as far as what kind of costs would be associated with the redesign? And what was the other one? What was the else you asked? Because we can't do CMAR per se
I think
until-
we could do CMAR. I think,
until we do, well, we have to change our policy.
yeah,
Or purposefully override policy.
Yeah, yeah, override our policy. Yeah, there you go. Yep, yep.
Type of policy is a bad policy.
So,
Or outdated, I shouldn't say bad.
and right now, we don't have a policy that would allow this, but if the process continues at the rate it's going, and we do change policy, then, so basically, if the district administration wanted to, they could halt the process, which takes time, to wait for the board to decide what we want to do, or continue moving forward. And if the board does change, we're wasting time having to catch up. So of three options, we continue moving forward. The board says, nope, we're good. Let's move forward. That's the only one that does not stall the process. So we have three options I see. we're going to change policy or we're not. And if we're going to change policy, then it's either stop the process or let the process continue and have the design professionals work with the construction professionals and catch up.
I would not recommend stopping the process.
And I don't know that we have the authority to say, stop the process.
Yeah, that's good.
So,
Which is a question I was
Well, we
asking.
certainly don't have the authority in this meeting.
Not in this
Because it is
meeting,
not
for sure.
agendized.
Yeah, yeah, I don't, yeah, as far as this conversation, I think we've got.
okay, so then what I'm hearing is as soon as possible, get onto the agenda policies related to construction, particularly FFC, and
There's
Teresa gave
several
us
others.
two, at least two, gave me two more.
Yeah, I'll just look at
So
the
we'll need to review
section of them.
with legal on what we can do on that. Okay, I will work on that.
Okay. That was fun.
There's sausage making.
Hopefully no one's mad at me for this one. This is good stuff. So semi-recently, we approved the AI policy for the district. There were many actions within that policy that were supposed to be carried out, and so I'm reporting back to you on where we are with those things. You would have seen probably in your district emails yesterday. And the first of two artificial intelligence guide for teachers. So the first one went out, next one will be coming soon. So that was sent to all staff members in the district. And then we have also completed both a student handbook and a staff handbook page that would just, we would instruct school administrators to, go to your digital handbooks, put this piece in there. And so those have been completed. We have an admin council with all of our administrators 2 weeks from tomorrow. So we intend to bring it there as a topic to discuss and see if there's any final feedback. We actually have those two things posted on the next item on here, which is a portion of our website dedicated to artificial intelligence. So the current iterations of the guide or the handbook pages are there on that page, but they can be changed. So I think they're pretty good, but if the administrators have any concerns or that sort of thing, we'll potentially make some updates there. The website, as I mentioned, it's active, but I don't think it's necessary, like it's functional, but I don't think we have it like discoverable unless you have a specific link at this moment, but it's very functional. I can forward it to you all so you can take a peek at it if you want. But so we've got that ready to go. And once we are pretty clear, feel really good about, and we're like probably days away from this. Once we feel pretty good about the content that's there, then we will send a notification out to all parents and staff members, notifying and letting them know that that all that information housed in one place. Within that same website, there is a feedback form for the policy, because part of our policy says feedback can be submitted. We will reevaluate the policy at least annually. So that feedback form is live and active on there. We have set a policy review date for March 17th. So that was pretty much 6 months from the time it was passed. We figured waiting a year the first time around was probably too long. Anticipating some feedback and adjustments. And so that we will reconvene in March to review that. And then we have a variety of professional learning courses, both self-paced on demand and led courses by Sarah. And then links to other opportunities for staff as well. So providing plenty of opportunity for professional learning for our staff members. So those are the many things that have been done by a combination of Sarah Jolly, our digital coach, and Mac Robinson, our IT director, and give Kayla Church a lot of credit too. And I'll take none of it. So that's what we've done with AI thus far.
The review date on March 16, that's the 17, that's for the admin council that
Nope.
doesn't come back for this board.
Nope. A policy review date is it would be like It'd be like our own internal, hey, looking at feedback, that sort of thing. Yeah, not a policy revision, but just a review internally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I think those will be my 2 things for today.
Okay. Any comments, or any additional comments or questions for Mr. Anderson? All righty.
Thanks for always taking the questions.
Yeah,
Even when you
Thank
don't
you.
know, we appreciate it.
absolutely.
Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah, I mean, worst I can say is I'm not sure. I'll find that out for you.
And you always find out for us, so thank you.
Contrary to popular belief, I shouldn't know everything that's happening everywhere. So it's
Well, you have a
totally
staff.
understandable that you can have a question I don't have the answer to, but I'll find it for
Thank you.
Ask my teenage son. He knows it all.
you.
You can have him on speed dial. All right. Sorry.
Call him next time.
There you are. 5.01 is board members or board matters, items from board members, non-action item. Who wants to go first? I'm going to throw out there real quick, since Mr. Durham's not here. He sends his regrets to Carlin Combined School, the staff and administration. He had this event already scheduled prior to the meeting board schedule coming out. So he sends his regrets, as well as to the community of Carlin, for not attending tonight. Brooke, do you have anything? Josh? No, we're going down the line. Miss Susan?
I just want to say thank you, Mr. Smith, for your presentation, because I joined that Teachers and Leaders Council, and it's all about that. And so it's like, I was a little lost just because I'm old, and so we just had administrators write your evaluations and observations. So that was very helpful. Your information was very helpful. So appreciate it.
Anything else, Susan?
Can I-
No.
No, going back, Teresa. We
I just-
passed you.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for hosting us, and Gracie, thank you for joining us. That's my thing.
Absolutely.
Okay. All righty. Speaking of Miss Gracie, do you have anything you'd like to say?
About this or about the things I wanted to address?
Anything that you would like to say as a member of the board?
So,
Yep.
okay. So, I would like to like bring up the how children in schools typically abuse drugs in areas which teachers can't like go and watch. You know what I mean? Like supervise them, like in the bathrooms, the locker rooms, like behind the school or off campus. Well, not really off campus, but off the general like building area. Do you understand what I mean?
Mhm.
It's just I would just wanted to bring that up because I would like to see some kids stopping like the use of vapes and drugs. It affects a lot of their school time. So
I don't think you'll find anyone at this table or in the audience that's going to disagree with you there. Do you have any suggestions as to how that might be accomplished, since you are in that environment much more than we are?
I'd probably just say have people go back to checking inside of the bathrooms in case like to watch the students like watch, I guess you could say, just to make sure that they aren't like doing it outside of the stalls like they usually do, you know what I mean? Or like go check the locker rooms like annually or like randomly throughout the day, you know what I mean?
Okay. Thank you.
This is a great time to, if I can chime in, to remind not only students, but staff and parents and everyone, our Safe Voice hotline is essential in sharing information. And I would say that anyone who knows definitively that someone is doing something that is dangerous either to themselves or to others, that information should be shared immediately with adults and not held on to.
Quick question, is Safe Voice, because I've heard from many people that Safe Voice is not like anonymous.
Safe Voice is anonymous.
Okay, I did say it wrong. Oopsies.
No, you're okay.
Okay, then I just wanted to bring up how a lot of children believe that it tells when you report others or when you have questions, like it says who like puts it in there. So they're often afraid to use it. So I'd say maybe some more clarification on that. It would probably help with some students.
Okay, yeah, it is 100% anonymous. I mean, someone can within their tip they give choose to disclose who they are, and sometimes that happens because oftentimes, like if a safe voice referral does not include enough information, then and you kind of need to gain more of that, then if you can't have an interaction with someone, that's tough to do. But those safe voice, we call them tips. Those safe voice tips stay active until we kind of can tell we're not getting any more info and we close them. And so sometimes what'll happen is, let's just say Brooke was to submit a safe voice tip. If she submits it, there's a live person on the other end of that isn't one of us yet. There's a live person who works for Safe Voice, and they will interact with that tipster, as they'll call them, and they'll say, I'm so sorry that's happening. Do you have any more information? What time of day is that occurring? Which bathroom? What classroom is it next to? They'll get like real detailed information. That way, an administrator, it's not just like someone on campus has drugs or Johnny has drugs. And it's like, well, you're telling me Johnny had drugs on Wednesday of last week. That's not really super helpful in this moment. And so what'll happen sometimes is someone will put a tip in, and then someone will try to interact with them, and it just dies there because someone submitted it and then that was it. I did my submission, which is great. But yeah, it's 100% anonymous. There's nobody ever asks what's your name, nothing like that.
Okay, but going back to the question where I was asked things that we could do about it. I know some schools don't have enough funding for it, but I've seen in like private schools, like for private Christian schools, how they'll have smoke detectors within the bathrooms and then cameras pointed towards the bathroom from outside that will start to record after the detector goes off. And that probably would help out like a little bit. A lot.
At least
So,
indoors, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So and Leslie, you mentioned AI earlier.
Yeah.
Do you guys have anything that's been like put in to be able to like detect when children use AI to write their essays instead of writing it themselves?
So we don't have anything in place for that. There are programs online that claim to be able to do that, but they're not 100% effective at it. Sometimes they don't catch AI, and sometimes they falsely flag something as AI that definitely wasn't AI. And so that's actually something that's called out within the guidance document we gave to teachers yesterday, is don't rely on those detectors. And so we certainly don't have the coders to put together such a platform, and so kind of an essential element of our like philosophy about AI is we don't want to rely on AI to do anything. In the end, AI is a tool, whether it's for a student or a teacher, it's a tool, but final decisions need to be made about humans, or sorry, need to be made by humans about the work. And so I would no more want a teacher to solely rely on a tool to detect AI than I would want a teacher to write a lesson plan using only AI, or a student to write a paper using only AI. So
Okay, then I guess that's just something to pay a little like more attention to afterwards then, I guess. But it's definitely becoming a huge issue within both my school and probably others. So
are you saying kids cheat? Gasp.
For
I know, right? You
And
would
they-
expect
But they
it.
never cheated before AI, right?
That's true.
Totally, no way.
Okay.
So one way, Gracie, because we did talk a little bit about this, one way is to change the parameters of what the assignment is.
Mhm.
If the assignment is write a 1,000 word essay, okay, AI is going to do that. Now, if it's using AI, write a 1,000-page essay that you can then present to the class,
Mhm.
what's the purpose of the paper? If the purpose is just to write 1,000 words, yep, kids are going to cheat. But if the purpose is to utilize those tools to encourage learning, then they can cheat all they want, because that's part of the assignment is to use AI. So it's just a matter of making sure that the educators have the tools to be able to assess that student learning.
Alrighty.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Because
I'm-
just
I
because
was just talking about like those types of essays that is either like opinionative or like argumentative, those type of things.
Perfect. And then hopefully the instructor would be able to say, great, Gracie, this is well written. Tell me why you feel this. And then if that person can articulate it, then somewhere, even if AI wrote it, somewhere they've learned something. Does that
Yeah.
help?
I think definitely talking back on things that you've written for like assignments or something like that would definitely help with just like the idea of it. Oh.
Great points. Thank you. Do you have anything else, Gracie?
Other than kids being violent, then no, not really.
Okay. Alrighty. We appreciate your time on the board. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Do you want to expand on the violent, kids being violent?
I'd say it's either like, oh, sorry, physically being violent, like 'cause there's been multiple kids getting into fights like during lunch or after school on school grounds. It ties into that along with the fact that kids will be like, not physically violent, maybe like mentally, like writing notes, leaving lockers, doing all kinds of nasty stuff like that. That's just another thing that's not going too well in school districts.
What do you think? We love to ask about solutions, right? Because everybody, we can all walk in here and talk about problems with our society. Like, who do you think the solutions lie with in those scenarios? Do you think adults putting more rules on things is going to solve those problems?
I wouldn't say necessarily rules, because children, no matter how smart adults think they can be, children will definitely find a way around a rule and then use it to their advantage. So I'd say try and keep an eye on like loopholes, like that would definitely help, but either way, pretty much not gonna have a happy day after that. So
Do you think your fellow classmates could have a positive impact on people being violent or people engaging in drugs?
yeah, if they try their hardest to stop them or give advice, like tell them what's wrong with it, like, explain to them what could happen to them in the future if they don't quit.
I think peer support probably goes a
Yeah.
long way. Yeah.
I'm going to be so bold as to also say in society, if we stopped pulling out our phones to record and we actually
Started doing something.
interacted and said, hey, why don't I have you come over this way? So
Yeah.
just throwing that out. But no, we appreciate it. Thank you. And thanks, Susan, for the follow-up on that. I didn't know how detailed she wanted to get, and I just kind of left it. So I was like, okay, I don't want to push you.
I don't have a lot to say unless you asked me a direct question, so sorry about that.
No need to apologize. We appreciate your interaction. Thank you. Thank you for helping inform us.
You talked about some very specific issues, which is very refreshing. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to echo what has been said as well on thank you to the school. Thank you for the community. A couple of quick notes. Candidates forum for the school board has been canceled. The participation is not what it needed to be. And so that forum has been canceled. However, the forum for the Elko County Commission with 2 candidates, the county clerk with 2 candidates, and Elko City Council with 3 candidates remains scheduled for Wednesday, October 16th. The ballots have been mailed, so many people have already received those. They can be mailed back in at any point. Keep in mind there are 6 constitutional questions and 1 non-constitutional question in regards to the candidates themselves. Constitutional questions are pretty major. I hope everybody reads through them because that's changing the state constitution. And in-person voting begins October 19th, continues through November 1st, except for Sundays. And it does apparently include Nevada Day Observed, which is Friday, the 26th, I believe. Finally, election day is November 5th. Last thing I have, and I'm just letting the board know that I'll be working with Mr. Anderson and with legal to look at developing a policy, and perhaps we find it in amongst the policies that we discussed this evening. But I'd like to see that the sitting board have the opportunity to review the professional services qualifications. As we've heard recently, there are certain professional services that do not require a bid. It's basically just a qualifications, and it's qualification based. If we were to create a policy that no less than every 3 years, we had a review, the sitting board would have that opportunity to review that. Now, we did this somewhat so, I think 2 years ago with our accounting audit personnel or audit professionals. So it would include that, it would include design professionals for buildings, it would include legal, et cetera. Not saying that there's anything wrong with anybody that we need to change, but that gives the board at least that opportunity to look into it and be a little bit more familiar with what the process is. So just giving the board a little bit of a heads up that hopefully before end of December, I'll have that opportunity to bring that up. If there's nothing else from the board, we'll move to 6.01, accounts payable, approval of accounts payable.
I move to approve accounts payable.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Are there disclosures?
I have to disclose that I work for Lone Wolf, so would be abstaining from voting.
Okay,
And I'll disclose that I have a family member who works for Wellsville Electric, but I will not be abstaining.
And I have to disclose that I also have a family member that works for Wellsville Electric that will not be abstaining.
okay. Maker of the motion, do you want that to include both payables or just the one? Or sorry. So I know that you
I made
seconded
the
it.
motion.
So what's that?
I made the motion.
Okay, do you want that?
Just the one.
Just the one?
accounts
Okay.
payable.
All right, so accounts payable noted as October 1, 2024. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Is there a motion to accept the accounts payable board reimbursement October 1, 2024?
Move to approve that one as well.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Disclosures?
I will abstain because that is for me, for the Stars Amazon gift cards.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. 7.01 is our meeting closing and final opportunity for input from the public. Is there any input from the public? Seeing none, we stand adjourned until October 15th unless we get a special meeting together per Mr. Anderson's, possible recommendation. Thank you all.